Okay, we're going to get started here. I'd like to welcome everyone to our council workshop today. We have one item on our agenda for today. We're going to get a presentation from LIHI, the Low Income Housing Institute, which is known as Tiny Homes. We have an hour on our presentation. I know there'll be lots of questions, so we're going to probably go and get started. I guess, is Josh Castle here? This is not a crying session. So, if anyone, who's going to kick this off then? We need to wait for Josh? Do you want to kick it off then? Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Come up here, please. You can go on there to the podium, man.
Hey, how you doing? All right, where do you want us to be again?
All right. We have an hour, so.
Y'all just assuming. You see what y'all do to me? Assume I'm about to come up here and preach. I'm not.
I said that before you got in the door, okay?
Hello, our city council representatives. Thank you so much. Actually, the beginning of our presentation is me starting this off. I want to first, before we get started, just to ask, before we get started, if you can clear your mind of what homelessness look like, clear your mind of the bias and the racism that has already been started to come around in the different, with different people and different communication, and give us a chance to be able to talk to you about homelessness. Give us a chance to be able to explain to you that there's all styles of homelessness. I was one. I was homeless. I dealt with being homeless in a domestic violence situation, a single parent with 3 children, and I needed a step. And if I didn't get that step, then I wouldn't be the woman, a businesswoman. I wouldn't have a nonprofit, and my children wouldn't be following in my footsteps. So please be able to give us the time. Now, many of us begin to say, why Kent? Why are we bringing tiny villages to Kent? It could go any city. Well, when our city shut down for 2 years and all the classes came together, upper class, middle class, low income, all needed help. We all came together. We started food banks. In those food banks, we had teachers, we had cashiers, we had construction workers. And we said, look, they became homeless. And I began to say, I can't come to our city council because our city council is suffering themselves. You got a budget that you need help with. Washington State had to give money to our own city. So I wouldn't be a community advocate, which I am, unless I'm able to go out and find resources and support systems that's out of the city of Kent to bring it here so it would not be a burden on our city. I found a place by the name of Low Income Housing Institute. Because if we're going to house single families that are homeless, that is working, that cannot pay rent, if we're going to house young adults that got their high school diplomas, got their degrees, and right now is homeless, if we're going to house families right now that I'm dealing with, that has 4 children, that I just put in I put in a hotel just yesterday, because there's no housing available and her husband works. We are got to have some type of housing here. In 2016, and Josh, you can get ready to come up, 2016, we were at 134,000 people in Kent. 2019, we was at 136,000. Right now, we're at 138,000. Right now, Skyway's at 20,000, and they were able to get a tiny village. Tukwila is at 18,000, and they said we need something for our city. Now it's time for our city to wake up. Josh.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. I appreciate all your engagement and all your questions and reaching out to us. And a couple of you came out to tour a few of our tiny house sites. So it was great to see you out there. I'm Josh Castle. I'm the Community Engagement Director with the Low Income Housing Institute. We are here today with a couple of folks. I'm going to try to get through the PowerPoint pretty quickly because we have a couple other speakers, and then we want to open it up to allow a lot of time for your questions. So you just heard from Ty. We also have, you can see on the screen here, we have LaTanya, who's from the Silent Task Force, and Lady Jacqueline Bowles from the Behavior Trauma Center. Of course, the Reverend Dr. Joyce Perry Moore, who would be the religious sponsor of the site from St. James Episcopal Church, Peter Ostrander, who's the Minister of Community Engagement, Tracy Williams, who's going to share her story as a former resident of one of the tiny house villages and a current village organizer. We hired her because she was doing such a great job organizing the village. And then Teresa Homan, who's our tiny house programs manager. Oh, next slide, please. Thank you. So LIHI has been around 31 years. We provide over 3,000 units of affordable permanent housing and some transitional housing across the region in 6 counties, 74 buildings. We have 2 urban rest stops providing laundry, showers, and bathrooms for people experiencing homelessness. We also have 16 tiny house villages providing enhanced shelter and case management to individuals, couples, and families. Next slide. Thank you. LIHI develops many permanent affordable housing units annually. Here's a couple of examples of ones that are pretty close to Kent. June Leonard Place in Renton, which provides 48 units for families and veterans. And then Auburn Manor Apartments, providing 25 units for families with children. Here's George Fleming Place, named after the late former Senator George Fleming, who was with us to celebrate the opening of the site just before he unfortunately passed away. So we named the building after him, and this is in the Othello part of Seattle, in South Seattle. So we operate 16 villages across the region. In Seattle, Skyway, unincorporated, King County, just outside Seattle. We have 10 in Seattle. We're developing an 11th one. We have 2 in Tacoma, 2 in Olympia, and 1 in Bellingham. These provide high-quality, COVID-safe enhanced shelter. Each tiny house is 8 by 12 feet. They have insulation heat and a locking door so people can secure their possessions. They also include shared hygiene and kitchen facilities, including laundry, showers, and bathrooms, community spaces, and offices for on-site staff. Villages eliminate a lot of barriers that exist with traditional shelters, where traditional shelters, they don't typically allow families and couples, people with pets. So it opens up that shelter for multiple populations across the region. Next slide, please. So tiny houses are built by volunteers and neighbors, pre-apprenticeship programs and faith organizations and others. They come fully furnished with a mattress, bedding, storage, heater, and welcome kit. We also abide by all fire safety standards, so we have the fire marshal come and regularly visit, and we have a carbon monoxide and smoke detector and fire extinguishers distributed throughout the site. Tiny houses are separated by, they can only be so close together for that reason, and we provide a lot of fire access in case of emergencies. And there's an emergency exit as well. Here's a couple pictures of our villages. This is True Hope Village in the central area. This is a village sponsored by 2 African-American Baptist churches, True Vine of Holiness Missionary Baptist Church and New Hope Missionary Baptist Church. We combine the titles together, call it True Hope. And this one has about 6-7 agencies providing referrals, including Chief Seattle Club, Urban League, Seattle Indian Center, Seattle Vocational Institute, and others, serving African-American, Native American, and Alaskan Native populations. This is our village of 6th and Orchard. This is sponsored by the First Christian Church of Tacoma. This is Pastor Olson in the photo, and here is several of our staff. That's actually is Governor Jay Inslee. He came and visited the site. And here's an overhead picture of what there's a lot of trees around it, and it's kind of be a similar village as the one that we're looking at right now, because it's religiously sponsored, and it provides a safe space for families with children. We also have Progressive Skyway Village. Yeah, that's in the unincorporated part of Seattle in Skyway. This is pretty, somewhat close by. We had a couple of visitors of several of our community leaders and elected officials that came out, including Senator Rebecca Saldana, and then the sponsors of the church, Pastor Taylor and Kathy Taylor of Seattle Word of God Church. And the Skyway Coalition is a neighborhood organization that really advocated and promoted the setup of that site, and that is also serving families with children. We have a lot of South King and Kent community allies that have been out to visit the site. You can see Councilmember Fincher is in a couple of those. We also have Senator Kaiser came out, Representative Orwell, and Senator Doss. Next slide. We've had a big couple of community meetings out there, including the Kent Police came out to visit, along with community leaders, the Chamber of Commerce, business leaders, and a few elected officials came out to learn about the village program at Progressive Skyway Village. Here's the inside of a tiny house. You can see the layout with the bed. There's a safe heater, and these curtains that are made by churches. The churches sew these and donate them. We have a community kitchen that includes a refrigerator, a coffee maker, a microwave, and it's a place for people to also dine. And we also have free meals that are brought by, or not free meals, they're one meal brought a day by Operation Sack Lunch to a lot of our sites, and then churches that donate a lot of meals. So it's very supported by food donations and donated meals. Our hygiene facility has showers, laundry, and bathrooms included. You can see this is the outside of one of the villages. When you're first walking in, this is what you see. There's always like a nice cedar fence with lattice on the top. There's one way to get in and out. Everyone has to sign in and out when they go out. In that office that you can see right inside the gate, that's where the village operations manager sits, and the organizers sit 24 hours a day around the clock. They monitor that space over weekends as well, 7 days a week. And people that don't belong there are not going to be able to stay there because they're watched by that security office. The only other exit we have is the emergency exit. This is really the only way to get in and out. They have to buzz that gate to get in, so we keep it very secure. We're building these at the Hope Factory in Soto. They've built probably 100 tiny houses out there. So this is the Sound Foundation's organization that we're working with, and a number of volunteers and staff that have been out there to support the effort as well. So and then we also have tiny houses being built by pre-apprenticeship programs across the region. So a number of students that are trying to get into construction training careers and living wage jobs build tiny houses as well. So management operations, we have a village operations manager. We have a case manager that provides support and services for the residents, village organizers that provides security and support around the clock. Village residents are required to agree to and abide by the code of conduct as a condition of staying at the site, and we employ grievance procedures to address any resident concerns that come up. So again, these are the case managers, and the operational support provides that 24-hour support for the residents to get on a successful path to housing. Case managers, they provide access to housing, employment, health care, getting IDs and documentation, because a lot of people come in without that. And so they get them their support so they can actually apply for housing, apply for work. Case managers are crucial to the program. They're the reason why we have the highest success rate of getting people transitioned into permanent housing. They're just incredibly talented folks who have multiple resources, and they also have a direct pipeline into our housing because of the 3,000 units. They can easily transition people into our housing across the region. So residents are required to work with the case management as a condition of staying at the villages. A couple shots of our staff offices. There's a case manager office. They're inside, the staff offices are inside of a tiny house, each of them. And then we have the village operations manager office as well. That's EJ out at our Rosie's Village site on the left. There's a shot of our tiny house staff team. Some of the people that help with the case management, the operations, the development support, and contracting, everything else. So that's our organizing volunteers, working with communities. That's just a couple special folks on our team. So again, we do have the highest success rate year after year at transitioning people into permanent housing. We looked at the numbers last year, and there were 56% of village residents exiting villages found homes. 50% of that was permanent housing. 6% was in a transitional housing. So the other forms of enhanced shelters have about a 23% exit rate into permanent housing, and basic shelter has about a 4% exit rate. So it does have a very high exit rate. Last year, we sheltered 745 people through the program, and overall, since it began, over 2,500 people have been provided shelter through the tiny house program. We get asked the question a lot: how long do people stay? We looked at the numbers last year, and we found that there was a 114-day median length of stay in the villages. Referrals are provided by local organizations and agencies, including of individuals, couples, families. People with pets who are unsheltered in Kent are going to be referred to the site. The client population, so these are folks that are unhoused in Kent that just need to step up. So this is going to include refugee families. We have Afghan refugees. A lot of Afghan refugees are coming to the city of Kent, so we want to be able to provide that level of service to get them into permanent housing. That also includes single mothers, transitional young adults, those who are employed but they just don't make enough to afford the housing, so helping them with that process to get into housing. The code of conduct, everyone has to agree to abide by that. They sit down with the village operations manager, they go over it top to bottom, and they sign it when they demonstrate that they understand it and they've had that discussion. So we strictly prohibit drugs and alcohol. They do have to work with case managers. There's no hoarding behavior allowed, and that's outlined in detail in the code of conduct, what that means, and we can get into that during Q&A. We have a pet policy, quiet hours, and everyone's required to do chores. We want to be a good neighbor. We want to increase the safety and enhance the the look of the neighborhood. So that's our goal with this program. We've proven that with many village sites across the region. We'll have a public community meeting in May to plan about the future site, to present the village plan and answer questions. Every village across the region, all 16 of them, have a community advisory council. Now, this is something that a lot of other shelter programs can learn from, because what it is it's neighbors, it's businesses, it's faith organizations, providers, and others, all people that are really in close proximity, a few blocks away from the site, that come together to provide oversight. They hold LIHI accountable, and they hold the village accountable to make sure that they're a good neighbor. They also provide input and support. So they go through, is there a concern in the neighborhood we should talk about? Is there a way, we want to donate or volunteer? There's opportunities to do that through the council. And they meet monthly. These are public meetings. You don't have to be on the council to attend these, and you can come in anytime and join us to hear what's going on in the village. So this provides transparency into the program and allows people a chance to hear from our staff on how we operate the program and how we support the residents. So we'll meet with any neighborhood group by request, Chamber of Commerce, business, Rotary clubs, and others. So when I first started, LIHI took over as the operator because of the problems that those two villages were having. We brought in operational staff to run the site, so they wouldn't be run by the residents themselves, which is how those sites are run. So we felt very good about getting people that had particular issues, because there was no rules when that village first started. People were allowed to basically leave garbage outside their house, everything else. So we've been able to move out a lot of people, and we feel good about that, but a couple people still remained, and we're still working on that. So those two sites just present unique challenges that we're trying to work through. I'd say three quarters of our sites, which is about that have started over the last like 3-4 years, that LIHI's operated from day one, where people knew right from the bat to start to sign the code of conduct and follow those rules, have had none of those issues. So I just want to make that clear that there's a unique history behind those. We also had some problems in the last 2 years because there was a eviction moratorium because of the pandemic. So people that were in violation of the code of conduct, unless it was a clear safety risk for the other village residents, that we couldn't actually do much about that because of the eviction moratorium. Well, that has now expired, so we have the ability to actually enforce our rules. So we're starting to really work with some of those few residents that are clinical hoarders to work on that, and we've cleared out just a ton of the garbage. The site actually looks really nice now. But that is one of those sites we had some challenges with, but it should have no, we don't expect that to have, we don't expect any of those challenges at the current sites because of what I shared. So, because people will know right from the start what the rules are. And I think that's all I want to share about that, and I can answer more questions during Q&A about that particular topic. Next slide, please. All right, so here's kind of the layout of the village. We have 28 tiny houses. You can see, if you kind of squint a little bit, we have offices for the site, site staff on the bottom. That's also the hygiene facility, the kitchen. We have fire access, so a fire truck can get in case that's needed. This is the back, last half of the, far back as you can go, parking lot of the church. So it's way back there. So it's actually not visible from the front. You'd have to go all the way around the back. And somebody's going to ask you, why are you back here? If you try to go back there without asking permission, right? So, and it's going to be separated by a fence. You're going to see little tiny houses kind of hanging out over the lattice that are of different colors. That's what it's going to look like on the outside. And like I said, there's only one way to get in and out, and nobody's allowed in there who doesn't belong there. So it's only the residents, which includes a lot of families with children. There's families with children programs that serve families with children. There's a lot of children's programs, things like that. At the church, so we take this very seriously. We're not allowing, this is for people that need to step up. It's not for people that have serious mental illness or people that have drug abuse issues. They're not allowed at the site. So this is first, you can see the meeting on the timeline here. Last week we had some early conversations with some neighbors. We had about 20 neighbors turn out. Ty went around and flyered the neighborhood, and we had some people show up to ask some questions and learn about the site extra early. So we're going to have a standing committee with the St. James Board. That's tomorrow. We're going to have a lot of neighborhood engagement between now and then, including having a big public community meeting and going around and like knocking on the doors, canvassing the neighbors, and having those conversations again. And then in June, July, we're going to set up the site and residents are going to move in. And we'd love for all the neighbors and volunteers to come out and help. Neighbors and volunteers are very, they're crucial to getting these villages going. So we have a lot of them that show up, and they show up, pre-pandemic days, we had 150 people at a time. So we're starting to bring back big groups again, and social distancing we're going to throw out the window pretty soon here. So we're going to get together to set up the site, and we have just these wonderful student groups to come out and church groups and everything, and neighbors that are all in the immediate vicinity come out and support the site. And that's not just for the setup and the building of it and the painting and the landscaping and everything else that needs to happen. It's also the ongoing support. So people bring meals, they drop off food donations. They're a big part of the success of the site. And there's my contact information. That's my cell phone number, my email. If anyone has questions, you want to reach out separately or set up a separate meeting, I'm available. So just let me know. I couldn't tell how much time it was. Okay. I'm done. And over to you. And this is Reverend Dr. Joyce Perry Moore, by the way, who's the
Hey,
church
y'all.
sponsor.
Wait.
Good to see you. I know a bunch of you. You've been to our church. Thank you all so much tonight, council members, Mayor Ralph, good to see you again, and all public servants and members of our community. Thank you for your kind attention to this matter. As just stated, I'm the Reverend Dr. Joyce Perry Moore. I'm also a homeowner and a registered voter in Kent 98030. It's about 10 minutes from the farm where I was born. I earned my Master's of Divinity and a doctorate in pastoral counseling. I'm a mother of 5, grandmother of 8. I'm older than I look. And former member of the Kent Human Services Commission. As an Episcopal priest for 11 years, I first served in the Bay Area, and for the last 7 years have been the rector, the director of St. James Parish here in Kent. And I'm here tonight. Why? Not to bore you to death, but to tell you why I wholeheartedly support allowing a tiny house village community to be created on St. James campus. My master's studies in Berkeley included social justice, anti-racism, and ethics. Yes, I said the E word. So when making a moral decision, I use the Potter's box by examining 4 areas. You all know what they are, of course. They're facts, values, principles, and loyalties. Number 1, the facts. St. James Parish is not totally independent. We're a part of the Episcopal Diocese of Olympia, or Western Washington. That means I am accountable to my bishop, to his standing committee with whom we meet tomorrow, and to the chancellor who advises and provides oversight for the memorandum of understanding into which we will enter with LIHI. It will be a 1-year memorandum of understanding, and if it doesn't work out, it's out. I want you to know that. St. James Parish has been part of Kent since 1893. I don't think any of us were around then. And serving our neighborhood on 94th Avenue South for 60 years, 6-0. Supporting 200 members and hundreds more visitors and partners. Our Minister of Community Engagement, Peter, right there, is going to tell you a little bit more later about our services. Here's something I learned today. In 2020, King County reported nearly 4,000 families experience houselessness, and nearly 1,000 unaccompanied youth. That's a lot of people. Of all the models I've seen, and this includes Seattle, San Francisco, and here, the ones that work include 24-hour staff and on-site case management. Those are the ones that work, and that is why I believe with all my heart that the LIHI Tiny House Village model succeeds, and their statistics and their stories, if you listen to them, they reflect that. Step 2, my values. You probably want to know what those are since I'm all collared up tonight. The most important promises in my personal faith tradition are made during our baptisms. I get to do another 2 baptisms this Easter Sunday. As part of our community, we all promise to seek and serve Christ in all persons, loving our neighbors as ourselves, to strive for justice and peace among all people, and to respect the dignity of every human being. These values are lived out in the LIHI communities. 3, my principles. I believe in the power of human connection, of empathy and compassion, and, as the Dalai Lama says, it is not enough to be compassionate, you must act. Yeah? Can I get an amen? Jesus of Nazareth told his disciples, whatever you do for one of those who seems to be less important, you also do for me. Finally, my loyalties. As the clergy leader of St. James Parish, my care is not only for those inside my church building, but also for those in our neighborhood. That's what a parish means, our neighborhood too. It's children, it's seniors, it's businesses, and the many, many immigrants and growing number of refugees who are moving here to start new lives, to find hope here in Kent. I care about our mutual safety and well-being. I care about that. That's an important thing for me. And I support building a tiny house village on the back quarter of our property because I believe it will improve the public safety and help more of our neighbors to thrive. For these reasons, facts, experiences, values, principles, and loyalties, I ask you all to vote tonight in support of moving this successful model of temporary housing forward in our city. Thank you for your time.
Council members and Mayor Ralph, my name is Peter Ostrander, and I am the Director of Community Engagement at St. James Kent. I am also a board-certified chaplain, and up until this last year, I worked in the multi-care system as a chaplain within the hospital system. And I chose to quit that job this past fall because my passion is for Kent, and my passion is for doing more than just providing spiritual care. I like to take all of the gifts that I have to see the whole person. And what we do through our office in our community engagement is when people come through my office, I see the person as someone who has specific needs, but it's someone who also has spiritual needs and emotional needs. And I'm able to use my chaplaincy gifts to be able to really see the person and really hear the person that comes through my office. I'm also the manager of our thrift shop, and St. James Thrift Shop has a wonderful history here. It goes back 40 years in Kent, and that services and takes care of some of the needs and some of the money that I'm able to put back in direct services into our community. Direct services, we do some utility work. We do some gas vouchers through a connection that we have. The Shell station down at the corner of Washington and James, who have committed to partnering with us to provide the gas to those in need. Most people that need gas are homeless individuals. A lot of other people need it to be able to get to wherever to their job to make all of the necessary appointments that they need to make. Sometimes in my office, when I hear the stories of the people that come and see me, I feel disempowered. And I feel disempowered because I don't know where to turn them to. The unsheltered needs are so complex. Our social services are so complex that I hear more and more all the time. It's like I have to make phone call after phone call after phone call, you know, and I just get busy signals. And it's a complex, hard, huge system that they have to navigate. To be able to have our own tiny village behind us, for me, is super empowering. It gives me one more quiver in whatever you call it, whatever it is. Yeah, one more tool in my pocket to help people that come through my office. Some of the people that come through my office, and there's a whole huge range, but the demographic that I think is most important to me are typically single moms. And I have grandmoms that are taking care of their kids. And they are struggling so hard to make it work. And a lot of times they move from their apartment and they become homeless for a moment and they figure it out and they go to the next place. Sometimes they're living in hotels up by the airport or what have you. And they're just trying to survive and provide safety net for their kids. And that's a type of demographic that I think that our teeny homes in the back of our church will really be able to support. I'm also a part of the Kent Community Partners. I'm sure you're all aware of that. We meet every Tuesday. Some of you may have been on there and witnessed what we do there. And so you can tell and you already know that there's a partnership in Kent. Instead of siloing, we're working together to provide solutions. And we all know that it's complex. All we really want to do is create just another opportunity, another thing that we can do to meet that complex need and serve a particular demographic that will really help the people in our neighborhood. And to that end, I'm just so supportive of what we're doing here. Just this morning on our meeting, there were two people. There was the YMCA and then there was Kent School District. And both of them talked about a particular demographic of youth. Youth between the ages of like 18 and 25 with the YMCA, and youth that the Kent School District are trying to make sure that they make it through their whole school year. And I don't remember exactly what they do, but I do know that when kids graduate, they don't necessarily know exactly what's going to happen to them, and they fall out of the system. This is another demographic that we can catch. We can catch those people. And I feel like what we're doing here is it's like the second tier of prevention, right? There are other ways. If we could just not ever have this kind of issue to bring up, that's the first tier of prevention. But if they're having issues or what have you, we can catch them when they first fall out and get them settled on their feet with all kinds of wonderful case management that we have that's here so that they don't have to fall that far. And that we can provide the type of umbrella care, not only with regard to LIHI does and Kingdom Gatherers do, or whatever the City of Kent does, or my connections with the partnerships that we have in Kent, of which we have so many. We can keep them from becoming the chronically homeless. We can keep them from moving in the direction that none of us really want them to do, because all they really want to do is to find their purpose, find their meaning, and find something that can help them sustain themselves and live the life that we all really want them to do. And for that, I really support this whole ministry, and I just think it's such a great partnership that we can provide in the back of our home and meets our values and what we have been doing for forever at St. James. So to that end, thank you so much.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, Chief, everybody that is here. It says Lady Jacqueline Bowles. I wear two hats, actually. I am the First Lady of Redeemed by the Blood here in Kent, down on Central Avenue, married to Dr. Bowles. Some of you know him well. But I'm also a family nurse practitioner by profession. And so we created a life center around 2016 in the city of Kent, working with the chief of police and the mayor's office and doing some great work up on the hill where we call McChevron. About a year ago, I was contacted by two clinical psychologists and a therapist that work outside of Tacoma. And they said, can we build a behavioral health agency with you and in the city of Seattle and in Kent and some surrounding areas? I said, yes, let's do an application. Well, we got approved. We got approved during the pandemic to actually open a behavioral health agency. So I come to the table with bringing that piece of All homeless patients have trauma. All, not patients, sorry, that's a nurse in me. All homeless families, people that are looking to get stable, come with a level of trauma. They need resources that we will be able to bring. That is therapists. We will be able to do a whole bio, psychosocial, mental assessment to make sure that they don't have those issues that Josh was talking about. So I'm proud to be a supporter of this effort and this work, and that we will be able to bring our mental health and behavioral health background. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council members. Thank you for hearing this matter today. My name is LaTanya V.H. Dubois, and I am, first of all, a servant of communities, period, for over 20 some odd years. I'm an advocate, a case manager. I am an executive director of the Silent Task Force, grassroots nonprofit organization. I'm here to, first of all, say I appreciate Ms. Ty Whitfield for all of her advocacy, all of her work to pull people together, to get people to believe in something so important as creating another safety net for families, for youth, for adults, for elders that are in your community that need this resource very much. I heard a lot of statistics and a lot of conversation around, unaccompanied minors. Well, it's more than 1,000 in Seattle. And that number has, been proven time and time again for the past 5 years through the McKinney-Vento program. So, that's important information as well to know there are a lot of homeless people out here. I provide referral and resource services for the Tiny House Village in Skyway. I tried to write some up so that I would stay on point because I could be up here talking all day around the needs of the community and how gentrification is the reason so many people have been pushed from Seattle to South Seattle, just from Skyway all the way here to Kent, and they pushing further. So we really know that that's a social economic issue and a part of some of the systemic racism that's been existing in our communities for a very long time. But I'm not here to do that. So let me get on my script. Okay, y'all? Okay, so we're grassroots, community-based organization, and we believe in working directly in our communities to provide services, support, and resources. We were asked by the Skyway Coalition and community members to become the stewards of the Skyway Referral and Support Program for the Skyway Tiny House Village. And of course we agreed, but to do this work, we engaged directly with the LIHI staff, management, and interface directly with providers. What we do is we screen all inquiring villagers by referral and direct calls, and we provide them with intakes and backgrounds checks. For this particular tiny house village, all particular or inquiring villagers would need to have a mental health assessment and a substance UA test before being considered to come into the village, and that is one of the requirements, I believe, for Kent. I will say, however, there are a lot of people that will be left out of the process because a lot of folks are in pain, have been in pain, have experienced complex traumas, and have mental health and substance issues. Just something to consider, but I know you do have wonderful programs already in your community to serve that population, right? So that's really good. Also, we work directly with LIHI to create the referral intake process for the progressive Skyway Tiny House Village. This village is going to be different, and I think every village should be, particularly when it's led by community. When you have community to fight for what the community needs, right? It's not just one aspect. You have your faith-based, you have your providers, you have other resources that are already in your community. So this village will have designated beds to certain community partners that are a part of this process that Ms. Ty has already worked so hard. And I will say, I met her at the Progressive Skyway Tiny House Village. Here was her and about 10 or 12 people. I was like, wow. And I don't recall any of you, but there were people, Miss Brenda. Miss Brenda, you were there, and I remember meeting you at the village where we got to engage with some of the villagers and talk to them about their experience and the type of help that comes with having the security net, the safety net of a tiny house village. So we'll be working directly with the partners. We'll be working directly with LIHI staff to refer the villagers. We'll make sure that everyone has the mental health and the UA that's required, so that you're clear about who is in your village, whether it's families or youth, young adults, elders. So all of that will be happening prior to any of them ever entering into the village to maintain the level of safety for the demographic of folks that you want to serve and see served here. And we'll be working directly with Ms. Bowles to make sure that she does those mental health assessments. So I'll be around for questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tracy. I'm a former resident of the Tiny House Villages. I moved into Tiny House towards the end of January of 2000. That's when the COVID first started. So I went to Pastor Jeffrey. I had nowhere to go. My sister and I walked all over downtown trying to find me a place to stay because I was homeless. I was sleeping in my car. And so I went to Reach downtown, and one of the agencies told us to go talk to Catholic Community Services. So I went there, and that's on 23rd and 23rd and Yesler, and I went to talk to them, and they told me to go talk to Pastor Jeffrey, who is the pastor of New Hope Baptist Church, where I currently was attending. But anyway, to make a long story short and everything, Pastor Jeffrey took me to the tiny house and everything. It was a Tuesday, and at Friday, I got to move in. When I moved into the tiny houses, I had 2 storage containers of clothes. When I got there, I was very stressed out, hopeless, didn't love myself, was suicidal, all kind of things. So while I was in the tiny houses, it gave me the opportunity to get all my mental health together, eyeglasses, doctor's appointment, see peer support counselors, do everything, because when I was homeless and living in my car, I couldn't do any of those things. You know, I couldn't like take care of my medical or my mental health or my anything like that, you know? And so my thing is, when I see a homeless person on the streets, we have to all look at them like, once upon a time in their life, they was not like that. Something happened in their life that made them be in the situation that they're in. And the situation that got me to where I was is I could no longer afford rent. The price of rent went high, and I was living in Tacoma. So I moved back to Seattle. And since I've been on my journey with LIHI, April 1st of this year, made 2 years I've been working with them. I'm a village organizer at TC Spirit on 22nd and Cherry. I work with the residents there. I let them know that I get it. I understand it. I walked in your shoes. I'm no better than you. So when I'm at work on Saturdays, I work a 12-hour shift, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I interact with the residents. I let them know that I am here for you. I've been in your shoes. I didn't walk in your shoes. And it's, you know, it's hard out there. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, I just, you know, want you guys to, like, take in consideration of trying to get some tiny houses out here in Kent, because I walked in their shoes, and you know they say never, never, say never. Any of us in here right now could be homeless. We never ever know, you know. So we have to take it to heart, regardless of whatever. We shouldn't judge a book by its cover, and we shouldn't stereotype a person being homeless because we don't know what they've been through. Everyone has their story. I mean, I have my story. My story was I couldn't afford rent no more, you know. And so now I'm working with LIHI, and it feels good to give back something that was so freely given to me. You know, that I can work with people that's in the same shoes as me. I'm still in their shoes. My journey's not over. I'm still in their shoes, you know. And so today, I'm asking you guys to reach out and think about it. Not think about it, but just go ahead and say yes. You guys want us to let us put some houses on the property, you know what I'm saying? Because it's so many homeless people out there. And again, like I said, never say never. We cannot judge a book by its cover. It got, you know, let's do this and let's make this happen. I mean, look, I'm 2 years. I live in a George Fleming place. I stayed in a tiny house for 6 months. 6 months. I did everything I had to do, met with my case manager. I was able to take showers. I was able to wash my clothes. I was able to eat. I was able to cook. I was able to go to mental health counseling, everything that I needed to do. I was able to do all those things because the tiny house saved me. I had 24-hour security, and that's what I am now. I'm 24-hour security when I work every Saturday. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's a 12-hour shift, you know, and I'm helping them support people that is, you know, that's needy, that really need help. You know what I'm saying? I still need help. You know, I'm not going to say just because I'm in a brand new building, George Fleming place, that I'm okay. I still got issues. And, you know, my heart goes out to homeless people. You know, my heart goes out to homeless people. And I see a homeless person, I don't judge them. I don't judge them because I don't know what he or she been through. And we all need to look at that, look in the mirror about judging a homeless person. We cannot do that. That's only God can judge. And I thank God for allowing me to be here, and thank God for allowing me to be where I'm at today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Riffle, and I'm here with my spouse, Martin Piskevich. We are excited to have this opportunity to work with LIHI. We are residents of the neighborhood. We live on 94th Street on the proposed neighborhood sort of street. It's a little off the street. But when we first heard about this project, we were so excited to hear that there might be solutions in the works. There are issues out there that people are facing, and it's so difficult to watch people struggle and not know how to help. And we love this organization because it gives us hope. We hope that the city of Kent can sponsor and support this so that we can also be involved in helping solve the problems that are out there, doing what we can do. So we're excited to be here in support of LIHI and this tiny house village. Thank you so much.
It's okay. You want to come up here and take a question, please? We also, before you go, I'm sorry, I do have, we got a staff member that need to talk also, so I'm going to ask you to just hold tight for a minute. Kurt, could you come up here for a second, please?
Thank you, Madam President. Madam Mayor, Mr. President, members of council, sorry.
We can switch seats. I'm okay with that.
He run up here, so I'm going to get that wrong. Well, look, I want to thank you for the opportunity to kind of just give you a bit of a refresher. 2 months ago in this room, we had our council retreat. Councilmember Fincher, this was, a near and dear topic to you for an info-only session at workshop. I, for one, can say I learned a lot in the last 30, 40 minutes, so appreciate the chance to kind of get a little bit more info. I was not able to attend any of the sessions where you invited staff out there, so learned a ton. This was really helpful for me to kind of learn a lot more. As promised at the council retreat, though, I wanted to give you guys a bit of a refresher. I think I can do it in 7 minutes or less on where we are from a code standpoint, what we've developed together, and just what we have on the books today. So I'm going to do that. A quick refresher on our most recent code amendments related to emergency housing and our emergency shelter, and then I'm going to pepper in some of our permanent supportive housing code that we worked with you on as well. We spent over 6 months revising our code to include, I'm going to say, provisions on emergency shelters. It was Ordinance 4358 we developed with and ultimately unanimously passed through council on June 5th of 2020. This ordinance updated definitions that include provisions for tiny houses. Again, thanks to Councilmember Fincher, made sure we included tiny houses in that definition at that time. We're going to review those a little bit more detail here in just a minute. Josh brought up at the onset of the meeting the permanent supportive housing concept. That was something that, frankly, our code was just silent on prior to that involvement at the staff level. I think we ended up passing our permanent supportive housing piece, I think around August of 2020, or maybe it was 21. I'm sorry, it's all kind of blurred. Frankly, as a commitment to addressing the homelessness crisis that we worked with you guys on locating and creating the first permanent supportive housing facility in our community. And frankly, I think it was the first one in South Puget Sound, South King County anyway. The Theo Bowman apartments operated under guise of Catholic Community Services. Was a huge investment. It was a big kind of first foot out there for our community, and I think it's pretty well received out there. We worked with the Kent City Council, creating one of the first, most comprehensive zoning accommodations for permanent supportive housing in King County. Just a quick refresher on that one. So what we did was we basically worked out a way to allow permanent supportive housing as what we understood at the time to be kind of the ultimate goal for housing the homeless. A bunch of investment will be required at the state level, obviously a lot of funding agencies there, but we allowed it in every one of our mixed use and multifamily zones in the city of Kent. So we were the first, I know, to do that in King County. So we now have permanent supportive housing as a green light in all of our multifamily zones. We also allowed, kind of through a twist to our group home housing and just a different definition and take on that, to allow permanent supportive housing as well in every one of our single-family zones. So that is huge. That's really what kind of set us apart from lots of other communities in King County. It's something I personally am very proud of, and you should be too as Kent Council. So I promised we'd get back to the emergency housing piece, and that's where we are. So where we kind of refreshed or re-upped our definitions, I'm just going to go over the two, because those are really the two that are in play here this afternoon. Emergency housing facility is a facility operated to provide temporary housing within a permanent enclosed building for individuals that are otherwise homeless and have no immediate housing options available to them. So that one, I'm going to ask you guys to think about kind of our tried and true shelter model that we've had in the city of Kent for decades, where it's a rotating, usually a church that's hosting, and it rotates every 90 days. So that one, we really didn't do a whole lot to that definition, but the big one here is we created a definition for emergency shelters. And again, thanks to Councilmember Fincher, who really coached us along on this one, I think all of council on this issue. Emergency shelters, a temporary structure not permanently fixed to the ground or served by permanent fixed utilities, such as, but not limited to, tents, tiny houses, sheds, trailers, or recreational vehicles operated to provide temporary shelter to individuals who are otherwise homeless and have no immediate housing options to them. So that was where we deliberately placed the tiny home kind of construct within that as a temporary or emergency shelter concept. So how are these two things different, the big concepts? The facilities are different than permanent supportive housing in that they're not regulated under the IBC, International Building Code, nor the International Fire Code. They are temporary in nature and are just under the regulated square footage of 120 square feet. Regulated square footage meaning the codes that my office applies to every other habitable structure kick in at 120 and up, 120 square feet and up. So it's kind of a gray zone. You know, Josh did a great job with the presentation. We did an info only with his team now a week or so ago where we got to see these. They look fantastic. They look very habitable. They will fall outside of International Fire Code, International Building Code. So, and again, he mentioned the shop where they're being constructed in Soto, I think. So here are the regulations that council passed back in June of 2020. There are restrictions for the emergency shelter concept that tiny houses, as being proposed tonight, would kind of fall under. I'm sorry about the readers. These are just black lines without them here. So the restrictions are, they would require a conditional use permit. So there's the first kind of, flag up in the air is a conditional use permit is required, which essentially just means an application is filed, and then within about 90 days, there is a hearing at the hearings examiner, third party body that there's notice posted at any proposed site, and then a 300-foot radius is mailed out to those in the immediate area. And it's 2 weeks before that hearing happens. So there's the first one. The facilities would be allowed in multifamily zones. So MRD, which is our duplex zoning, and then our low, medium, and high multifamily intensity zones. So as it turns out, this location that is being discussed this afternoon is in fact in an MRD zone, so the zoning would work there. Has to be on the same lot as an actively operating church, religious institution. We've kind of covered that in detail tonight. It has to be a minimum of a 2-acre site. And then the important one here, I think, for council to remember, that is adopted code from you guys, is they can operate for 90 days on and then 90 days off. So within that 90-day interim of an off period, you could reconstruct or rebuild or rehabilitate in another 90 days. So another way of saying that, 90 days on, 90 days off, they could happen again within 90 days, not to exceed 6 months in a calendar year. There's the big one that I think is, needs to be considered here this afternoon. 1,000-foot spacing from other emergency facilities. So 2 of these operating would have to be more than 1,000 feet apart. They can house a maximum of 35 people. So I'm not totally sure how, Josh's team really would make that work. But again, we're looking at, I think I counted quickly 40 units on one of the images, but then I also heard 29 units. Again, they're looking at units. Our code would limit to 35 people. Provide sanitation and basic safety measures, including, forgive me here, it's a list, a portable or permanent toilet per 20 persons at a minimum, with hand washing stations at each toilet, rodent-proof litter receptacles and food storage containers, 2 large first aid kits that include emergency eye wash bottles, a secured area for dry supplies storage, covered kitchen at least 20 feet from any sleeping areas, with hand washing and dishwashing stations stocked with soap, cleaning supplies, including work gloves, disposable gloves, a trash grabber tool, disinfectant, hand sanitizer, masks, buckets, paper towels, etc. So our code got pretty extensive that we adopted with council. Feminine hygiene products, 2 Narcan kits. And then it goes back to the agreement section. And this was covered, I thought, really well this afternoon. Written documentation required between the operator and city, including proposed staffing and operational characteristics, including confirmation of required sanitation and basic safety services, proposed population to be served, code of conduct to be observed, including conflict resolution steps, criteria for rejection or removal of an individual, plan for managing the exterior appearance of the site, including trash and litter cleanup and pickup, on-site contact information for community to report concerns, and plan for addressing reported concerns and documenting resolution, and then the proposed site plan. So it's not often I'm at the podium reciting code, but I wanted to make sure that council had a clear recollection of what we passed together 2 years ago. I do think it does, it captures everything that's kind of being proposed this afternoon. I just, again, wanted council to have that recollection of where we are in a code standpoint. Yes, sir.
Repeat that one more time. I didn't get that.
First criteria for emergency shelter proposal under those zones would be a conditional use permit. It's a process that we use to kind of capture some that don't fit neatly in one of the other kind of boxes in our use categories. So with that, Mr. President, is the applicant comes in, an application comes in, and staff will review it and form basically a staff recommendation to a third-party hearing body, which is the hearings examiner. And the applicant and then staff basically attend the hearing, and then the hearings examiner renders a decision. It is an appealable decision if it doesn't go one way or the other, but that's how that system works. You bet.
Wow. A lot of information tonight. We were scheduled to stop at 6 o'clock, right? But I think I'm allow 20 minutes for us to ask questions. We go a little longer. I'm sorry. Yes? Was the chief on the schedule? I'm sorry. That's right. I totally forgot. My bad.
Good morning. We just have some brief information. Council President, we were asked to come forward and provide just some data and information on maybe the public safety impact. So we'll just present that quickly. I want to say up front, the data was somewhat difficult to get, but we put together what we could predominantly from Seattle, Seattle PD. And it's important to footnote the data and information does not account for anything other than what was reported at the tiny home villages. So surrounding properties and businesses, we have no way to track if or what there was in regards to impact. So with that, I have Commander Michael Riley with me tonight. As you know, he's been involved in a lot of community engagement, working with our homeless over the years, and I'll have him present the info.
Hi, good evening. So early on in some of the stuff that we've done some research on, there were some stumbling blocks with this model. There's one in particular was in Seattle, Licton Springs, you may have heard of. There were some crime issues in the area, concerns with an uptick in crime, some of which had to do with the demographic, meaning they were taking on people who had addiction problems who weren't making it in other recovery places. Hence, however, that has been somewhat cleaned up from what we can see in some of the other villages. In Tacoma, they have emergency micro shelters there. Between August 2020 and March 2022, there was a total of 70 units in one and 50 units in another. They had a combined, over that time frame, about 27 police calls, which generated only about 5 case reports, 2 assaults, a welfare check, an unwanted person, and then a citizen had initiated an online report. There's a tiny house village on 6th and Orchard, which opened December 2020 with about 40 units. There's been a total of 8 police calls there, and only 1 case report, and that was for an assault in June of 2021. And of note for both of those, notably in the first one that I talked about in Tacoma, December 2021 through the present, there have been 0 calls for service there. And then the one on 6th and Orchard that I just talked about, I've got 0 calls for service from September 2021 to March 2022. Puyallup Tribe Tiny House Village, there's one there. It contains 30 tiny homes. There's been a total of 5 police responses there since February of 2021. One of which included a shooting, a shots fired, an unwanted person, and 2 welfare checks. And that might be from the area because it lists that only 1 case report was taken at that location, So those other ones might be in the general area. And let's see, they had 0 calls for service December 2021, 1 in January, none in February, and 1 in March. In Olympia, they have 1 sanctioned tiny village on Plum Street. It's a Plum Street Village. It opened in February 2019. It contains 29 units. In 2021, there was 31 incidents, and in 2020 there was 31 incidents, and in 2021 there was 49 incidents. I don't have details about when and how they occurred. Olympia PD indicated that they have multiple additional unsanctioned tent camps throughout the city, but just the 1 sanctioned tiny home village. Seattle currently has 11 open villages that are listed. I'll just kind of hit on some of the details over the past 2 years. They've ranged from a total of 39 calls for service, which is the highest, and that's at Myers Way Camp, Second Chance, down to 1 at the North Lake Tiny Home Village. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lowest have had a total of 7 calls, 4 calls, 2 calls, 2 calls, 1 call, and 1 call in 2 years time frame. And then the upper tier is 39, 22, 21, 18, and 17, total calls for service over 2 years. The typical calls in the Seattle area, there was a total of 30 disturbance other type calls, 20 assault calls, and this is total for all of these villages over 2 years. 10 suspicious circumstances calls, and then after that it drops down to single digits, 9, 7, 5 for things like crisis, harassment, theft of vehicle and such. And the one I also visited, King County Sheriff's, that's the Progressive Skyway Village I was with Councilmember Fincher at. They have 33 units there. In 2021, they had 9 incidents, 2 case reports. And I don't know if that's just, oh, that is King County Sheriff. Yeah, and then in 2022, they've had 1 incident so far and 0 case reports.
Okay. Thank you, Commander. As best we can tell with the data that we have, it really matters in terms of what the restrictions, the guidelines, and the oversight is for any of these in terms of call volume. So that's the data we are able to collect.
I'm sorry, yes. Councilor Malumber, then Troutner.
So I'm curious, the demographics we're talking about here in Kent would be no mental health issues, no drug dependency issues. Can we isolate, I had a hard time understanding some of the statistics. I'd like to see an apples to apples. I feel like we just compared apples to oranges. I'd like to understand villages with that similar demographic where they don't have the drug and they do have like the code of conduct and they have the mental health screenings. How do they compare? Like, what were the statistics for just those?
Yeah, and I'd like to be able to provide you that level of analysis as well. We don't have the data down that. But what I can tell you is that it is a clear demarcation from when these started years ago to where we are now. And I think it's because we've progressed in terms of making sure we have the guidelines and rules that are going to help be more successful today. As far as what's where for each breakdown, we'd have to go back to those organizations and compare those across, and we don't have that data.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Troutner?
My question is at the end, so are we?
We through with the chief, so if you want to bring.
Can we start asking questions?
Yeah, I want to bring
Josh. I want to say Joshua, but Josh, sorry.
Well, I want to bring Kurt back too at some point too.
Okay, Councilmember Michelle, you got a question for the chief?
Yes, I have a question for the chief.
Chief?
Chief, I'm wondering if you can tell us how those numbers compare with other communal living situations with similar numbers of people.
Other communal, you mean like in terms of unsanctioned camps, or what would be a
like apartments or like small apartments?
It varies. I would say that on the lower scale of what we saw here, these would be right in par with some of our apartments that aren't having major issues. And we have apartment complexes, I think, that generate significantly more calls. So if you're looking for kind of a baseline answer in terms of impact, it's probably a moderate to low impact on calls for service overall. Again, I think the proof is in how it's set up and regulated.
Okay, Josh, we slowly ran out of time, but I think we have some questions. We'll start off with some of the questions. Any councilman want to go first? I got Malala, so Councilman Trott, do you have a question, please?
Thank you, Council President. So apologize if I missed this piece, but I don't think there was anything mentioned about cost. So how much do these houses cost? Who is paying for that? Who is paying for the garbage, utilities, insurance, and taking on that liability? You talked about multiple supplies, and then also there has to be a cost involved with moving people in and out or removing people. So, and then is there any expectation on the city to provide some of those services and take up that expense?
Yeah, there's always a lot to share, so I'm glad that you asked that question. There's always a lot to squeeze into these slides. So the cost, so right now, we applied for a grant through King County that we're feeling pretty good about, so we're just waiting to hear from news from them, and that's basically would cover. we're trying to do it 2 sites in Tukwila and 1 site in Kent, and we're waiting for to hear the grant, the news on that funding. But like I said, we feel good about it. The funding would come through King County. It wouldn't be coming from the city of Kent. And LIHI would be the contract holder, the operator, who would be providing all the, covering the utilities, covering the insurance, covering the, all the legal liabilities. Everything would be under LIHI. And when it comes to cost, operational cost, that can range sometimes. So this is going to be sort of on the smaller end of sites. Answering another question that came up, it's going to have 28 houses. They said that there was a limit of 35. We don't think we're going to have more. We think 35 is probably going to be the max of people, because that's going to include couples and families. So it's on the lower end of the sizes of villages. Probably around, I'm going to guess around maybe 800,000 operational costs. And then when it comes to setup costs, it's usually like around 600,000 to set up the site. But a lot of that is covered from people that are building tiny houses off-site and donating their efforts and donating, their private funding to do that. So that's what kind of that's what the costs look like and the funding source. Was there anything that I covered, Councilmember Trotton, anything I didn't cover in that?
If I could ask just one follow-up question. So you mentioned, I know that Kurt said 35 people, and you said you probably don't anticipate having that. And I know, Ty, you talked about the importance of families and people with children or grandparents that are raising their children. How many people can live in one of these tiny houses?
Yeah. So the tiny houses, and he mentioned about the code, about the 120 square feet. So the magic that makes this program work is that if you build a site 120 square feet or less, that's the building code limit. Where you go above that, you got to get a building permit, all that stuff. So the tiny houses are not actually permitted. The kitchens and the bathrooms are. So the 120 square feet, it's 96 square feet. The eaves brings it out to 120. So that's about the size of a bedroom. You can't fit a lot of people in there to keep it comfortable. So probably around, usually like a couple could live in a tiny house. A single mother with their child. We do have a setup where the bed, you can do a bed pull out, so you can maximize the space that way. So we do find creative ways of doing that. So a lot of times with a family, sometimes you might if you have a larger family with a couple kids and then the couple, then you put them in 2 tiny houses that are right next to each other. So that's a lot of times the way that we do it. With couples and families, I heard the maximum would be 35. I mean, we'd be comfortable if that's what the regulatory, limit is. We'd be happy. It's 28 tiny houses, and 35 people would make sense for that site if you have the couples and families.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Michaud.
I have a couple of questions. My first one is for Kurt. I'm wondering what are the reasons that this would be denied in the hearing?
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
Yes, I'm wondering what are some of the reasons that the conditional use permit would be denied at the hearing?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, it's third party, right? So the hearing examiner would form a denial based on some either input received from the public hearing, so from somebody that is attending the hearing itself. I guess just from a more practical kind of nuts and bolts piece, I can respond. Staff would only recommend denial, because that's the only piece that I have in this piece, is if it violated one of the things I recited to you guys. So if they weren't compliant with, it was a non-conforming zone, or if they had, a site plan that didn't make any sense, or if there were, they weren't satisfying some of those conditions that I kind of walked you guys through. That's the only piece that would get a staff recommendation. Again, staff only recommends denials if it didn't meet one of those criteria. Something would have to happen outside of, a staff input that, there was a lot of either opposition in a given neighborhood or something that wanted to come attend. Again, the hearing examiner could make a recommendation for denial like that. And Councilmember showed that any decision rendered out of a hearing examiner is an appealable act, right? So that there will be relief steps that are highlighted as well, but it's supposition at this point for me.
Okay, thank you. That was really my question, was if public comments could play a role in that.
What was that again? Kurt, stay up here. I didn't hear you.
All right, I have a question for you while you're up here, save you some steps.
Yeah.
So the fact that our current zoning or ordinance requires 90 days on, 90 days off, what actions would we need to take? Would it be a change to the ordinance, or would the conditional use permit allow for that to be overridden and be?
To extend the time, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, honestly, I think that's a code amendment at this point, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, we'd have to go through a code amendment process.
Thank you.
Councilman Fincher?
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that right now shelters are, I don't know of any shelters that are supported by the city. There is the grant process that organizations can apply through to get grants, but unless I'm wrong, we don't have any shelters that we are supporting now. I know we had one at our church, and it was supported by the church and Catholic Community Services. After being open, we did apply for a grant, but it was not what ran the shelter. So there are some cities, such as Seattle, they have actually partnered with LIHI to operate the shelters and to fund the shelters. That's not what we are proposing here for Kent. We are not looking to get into the business of supporting tiny house villages. And as far as families, we still do, there still is not any place for, say, a family of 5 to go. We'll have the new shelter opening up, or families will be taking residence in the new shelter here very shortly. But that's only nine apartments. So there's definitely a lack of housing for them also. But this will at least help some, like I said, that single mom or dad who has a child, the individuals. And again, one thing that this village is requiring that is not required by most is the extra screening that you heard Lady Bowles mention. And so there are actually extra steps to assure that people are mentally fit, to live, that they are not bringing in people with serious problems as far as drug addiction, mental illness, and that sort of thing.
And I'll just also adding to that really quick. So we want to get people in and out of the program as quickly as possible. We have a goal of getting them out in less than 6 months. So this population, we think will be able to move in and out pretty quickly. Even though I said there's like 28 tiny houses, serving up to 35 people, we hope to serve many more people than just that number. Because once people move out, we can move in new folks who need the services.
Okay, thank you. You got a question, Madam Mayor?
Just a quick clarification. We do support shelter via CCS. It's been currently at the SeaTac Hotel. We'll be supporting at the new location, and we also fund multi-service center for family shelter.
Right, but
so
not the
all
full
of that's
support
being
of that.
funded via our human services dollars.
And our support goes to that, along with other agencies to help, but we are not, it is not our shelter such as.
We don't run a shelter, but we absolutely fund them.
And anybody else would be able, in fact, the grant period, I believe, is open now, that people could apply for grants through the city and all.
See, a lot of lights are still lit up, but I got a couple of questions I want to chime in real quick, then I'll go back to the light up here. So I'm just curious, I got a whole list of questions. We're not even going to get through these here, but what is the source of funding to build a village? And then from what I'm understanding, based on some of my research, that the funding after 2024, there's no more funding. Is that wrong based on what I heard, or what?
That there's no more funding to build.
Would support the tiny village from King County after 2024.
Well, we contract with the King County Regional Homeless Authority for all of our Seattle sites. We have 10 right now, and we're working on funding sources for a few additional sites that we would like to build in Seattle, including South End Village. So we're working on that right now. There's definitely future funding. Like for instance, if you're just referring to King County, that's basically the picture here.
Right.
But then we have Bellingham, we have Tacoma, we have Olympia. In all those situations, they're funded. The cities in those situations, not the counties. Actually, Bellingham, I think, has partial funding from Whatcom County, but so that's kind of an interesting hybrid. But the other ones, Tacoma and Olympia, are funded by the city. This site, just to be very clear, this is a King County. King County would be funding this site.
Okay. Kurt, I got a question for you. I'm just curious, so could you please help me just for how are we going to go about referring people? I mean, there's a lot of people. First of all, Tracy, thank you for your story. Very passionate, Many, many blessings to you. How are people going to be referred? I mean, there are lots of people that there's a need out there. No ifs and buts about it. So what process are we going to use for referring people? And my second question, is this going to be for Kent people only, and how will you monitor that?
Second question, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Only people who are unsheltered in Kent.
And how will you monitor that? How do you know this person's from Kent?
Well, I think the people that are doing the referrals they'll be able to to identify that. And that's the Silent Task Force, and that's other community agencies that are operating in Kent that know that they actually have connections and relationships. They know the people that they work with that are out in the streets that need these services, including a lot of like I said, families and the Afghan refugees come into the city of Kent, which there are many. So it's only those who are in the city of Kent, and it's only Kent agencies that are providing the referrals.
Okay, thank you. And Kurt, so what my understanding is that once we allow it in this particular area here, right? Like, did that open up for the whole city for having tiny houses? Not necessarily Lee House, it could be Brenda High, right? I'm just saying, does that open it up for the whole entire community to allow for these types of tiny houses?
So I'll answer it two ways. So in code today is what basically the recitation I gave you guys. That operates today. Anybody can meet those criteria, doors are open. So under the restrictions that council approved June 2020, if they meet those conditions, anybody can do that proposal, whether tents, tiny houses, or whatever it's going to be, 90 days on, conditional use permit in those zones. If council wants to pursue an exception to any of those standards, for the most part, that'll be a code amendment process. And then council has a question at that point that you have to answer. Is this something that they want to pursue at a location, meaning a site-specific location, or do they wish to pursue a code amendment that would basically change the rules for citywide within 34 square miles? So that's a question I give back to council. That's your decision, not mine.
Okay. We're not going to be able to get all these done. I know we got lots of questions. We'll go to 6:30. Okay, we'll go another 5 minutes, and then I'll take more questions, and then we'll go from there. So I see Councilmember Lummer.
So first I just wanted to also thank Ms. Williams for coming forward and sharing your story. I love when we can have a face to the topic we're debating, so thank you for that. And I shared with my fellow council members via email, I did a little bit of research myself on just what it takes to live in Kent. Average rents in Kent are $1,523 for a one-bedroom, and that was as of March. Monthly income when you're working full-time 40 hours, minimum wage, less taxes, $500 less than that. It's $1,000 take home. So there's already a $500 gap just to even live in Kent on a minimum wage job. So there's definitely, a need here, and there's a very valid reason that this population, this demographic that would be served is, in need. So I think, I support this, and, I encourage my fellow council members to support this with the conditions and the very specific demographics that we're talking about here. I think that it fills a need in our community. So just wanted to end with that.
Okay, council member, lights going on and off. Core.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Josh and team, for the great presentation. We had a lot of questions and you've answered a ton of them. My just one take on this, I support this after hearing all of this and listening to Chief Padilla and Commander O'Reilly. It's a low to moderate risk to the community, which I'm sure we're fielding more calls right now anyways. But I think the demographic that we're trying to serve here is definitely, I fully support that. My only concern here is usually, some of the families living in car, family of 4, family of 5, or refugee immigrant families that are coming in are 5 to 8 members in a family. It's are you thinking of, I guess you're considering putting them in multiple tiny homes and trying to get them get them housing. So I just don't know how, I can't see how that's going to work. I know the demographic we're trying to service families and single moms and youth, and the need is there. So as Councilmember Larmer said, I would be supportive of this with those restrictions. So thank you so much for coming here and sharing all this information with us. And thank you, Ms. Williams, for sharing your story, and good luck to you.
Councilman Trotman, you have more questions?
Just one more question. It might be something that you can get back to me or respond back to council members at a different time. But if my notes are correct, the average stay for someone is 114 days?
That's median.
Median, okay. And then 50% of the people that you are housing get into permanent housing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
50% of the people who exit the village exit into permanent housing.
Okay, and then 6% into transitional.
6% into.
Okay, so that does leave a percentage of people that don't.
That means, that's true, that means there's a percentage that don't. And why do people not move into permanent housing, right? Some people still have a mate on the streets, and so they will just abandon the unit for a variety of reasons. That's just one. And so we have a lot of abandonments. You'd be surprised. Some people, a very small percentage really, just can't get on board. They're not ready for a program. They're presenting a safety risk to the village, and that risk turns out to be so great that we have to make the decision. But I want to say the reason why the statistics are what they are in terms of what the police presented is because we do a few things. One, we really, really train our team well in de-escalation. And not only in de-escalation, but also in communication. Like, how do you really connect with somebody? And I managed a village before I became the program manager, but how do you reach somebody who ducks out every time they see you? Like, how do you finally, make that contact? And so we teach even, like, try to talk to them through their dog. Like, literally, hey, can I pet your dog? He looks friendly. Is your dog hungry? People will answer about themselves in terms of their animal. Yes, he's hungry. Oh, we're going to get a snack. Would you like a snack too? Yes, I would, right? Talk to people about their bikes. They come in with their bike, and we even teach, like, we call it the bank shot, but like the guy who ducks out, and you can never like quite get his attention. So Dustin and I will be having a conversation, and I'll see him, and I'll say, "Hey, John, come see me when you have a minute." Now John will come right over and go, "What do you want? Right? Am I in trouble? Right?" But we don't answer them. We say, "No, I'm talking to Josh right now. Just pop in anytime." Do I really have anything I have to say to this person? No. What happens when they come see me? I make something up. Oh, we were thinking about a potluck. Do you think we should do hamburgers? Do you think we should do hot dogs? Or we're going to be planting some flowers. Do you want to help with that? It's just like we teach how to break the ice, how to be in relationship, how to check on them, how to love them forward, how to ensure their preserve their dignity, ensure their success in moving forward. And we even have a campaign called Speak to Their Future, Not Their Past. It literally means everybody gets trained in a particular role in ensuring that the client moves forward. So for some, I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited. But so like the VOs, like the people that are just working around the clock and they have the most contact with the villagers, their village organizers, their job is just simply to get the client speaking about their future, right? Motivational interviewing. Where do you see yourself beyond the gates of our village, right? Managers are trained to pay attention to the income or lack of income and be steering the clients toward conversation and dreaming up what is actually possible for them. So if they don't have income, then we're talking about their options in a studio and kind of steering them away from their dream of a 2-bedroom house, right? Well, we'll start small with the studio, but guess what? There's so many cool properties. LIHI develops that, they have rooftop gardens. They're beautiful when you come in. They're just everything you would want in a small studio apartment. So they have that role, and of course, case management. I just want to address one thing. Case management, so what does LIHI really provide? You were asking the question, what happens when somebody moves into housing? LIHI pays the deposit. LIHI pays the first month's rent, the last month's rent, right? Somebody's evicted. It's not that you have to check on your record that says you were evicted and that keeps you out. What keeps you out is you owe somebody money. LIHI will pay up to $5,000 for that. You want to go to truck driver school, get your commercial license, and you're really motivated. You come to your case manager and say, hey, I really want to take this class. Here's the application. I can't afford the $3,500. LIHI will pay for that. We raise our money to actually set people up so they're not moving into apartments, you guys, with no furniture. LIHI pays for that. We take people, we help them get a bed, we help them get something to sit on in their living room, right? We're so committed. Nobody that works for LIHI doesn't have this passion, and nobody doesn't do this without integrity. Integrity, I couldn't work for LIHI if they didn't operate with integrity. I teach every single village employee with my coworker Andrew, how you have those conversations, how you break the ice, how you ensure forward movement, how you preserve their dignity in every moment, even the moments where you're sitting down and having a difficult conversation about coming into compliance with the rules, right? We encourage people. Here's the thing. We know what's possible.
There's lots of, I know you're passionate, and I hear you. God bless you. I hear you. We are running out of time here. Thank you. Yeah. See, I know I'm talking about Ty, so you okay, Ty, okay? All right. So couple other questions that we really need to wrap it up. This probably either for Kurt or Pat. We talk about how we can go about selecting people. And I think about discrimination, right? I think about that, right? So can we, Kurt or Pat, the legal, can we discriminate and say you can't go versus you can go? Maybe Adam or somebody can answer that question from a legal perspective? Or whoever.
You're going there. I'm going to have an attorney act like an attorney.
Yeah, I think that's a fairly tricky question, both from kind of a logistical side and a legal side. I mean, logistically, these are generally people without residences, maybe without ID. Logistically, how you're going to figure out where they're from is a problem. But on a legal side, you might run into a few different issues with, if it's on church property, it's maybe some religious exercise issues there about who they can invite on their property for legally permitted use. There's a few different constitutional traps there, maybe.
Thank you. We'll follow up, then we go, please.
So in our zoning, I feel like we cannot write a code that says it can only be people that don't have substance abuse issues or mental health issues or, pick a thing. It feels to me like we don't have the authority as a city to discriminate based on those things. So while this project says this is the demographic we're serving, the city can't require that. So there's no way that it stays, there's no way to ensure that it is only this, it doesn't change a year from now, or that the next village that comes has those same rules, or am I wrong on that?
I think we could potentially run into some ADA issues with that sort of qualification on residency. But at the same time, if there's trust with the organization that that's part of their own process, that would separate the city from making that decision itself.
But we can't write that into code. We can't say you can have a tiny home village as long as everyone passes a UA once a week.
Wouldn't think so.
Isn't that part of the conditional use permit, though?
Sorry?
Isn't that part of the conditional use permit, though? Is those requirements to get the permit?
We do have, I think Kurt's here too, but I do believe we have in our requirements that there's no drug or alcohol use on the premises.
Yeah.
As far as giving people UAs before they enter the premises, I think that's a different question.
Okay, this is where we're at. Councilman Fincher have a question, and I'm going to wrap it up. So Councilman Fincher, please.
Okay, so this is the organization. I mean, I didn't think at least that we would be writing those sort of things into code, because that's going to be the organizations who are driving that. And we have organizations such as Rita's House, or rather Catherine's House here, that is only for women in recovery. We have different organizations have different rules for allowing different clientele into their homes. The housing units that they have and the programs that they run to fit into those programs. So that would be an organizational question, and that's who this organization, who we've been talking about the whole time, as of bringing in. And you're right, somebody else, that's just not what we're looking at. Yes, Pastor Joyce.
I just wanted to address, with respect to the question that raised about discrimination by President Boyce.
Yes, ma'am.
St. James, as an Episcopal church, as a denomination, we do not discriminate based on someone's gender, race, sexual orientation, or in the terms of our social services, their faith tradition or lack of faith tradition.
I wasn't talking about the church. I'm married to a pastor. I'm married to a pastor, so I understand. Not about. I was talking about LIHI, not necessarily the church. Yeah.
He mentioned it in his legal comments, which is why I wanted to make sure to address.
I got that part.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, President.
Thank you. So.
I'm sorry, I was just taking that back. So with them, they're going back to, they're partnering with the organizations in different houses, different organizations. The organizations still are the ones who are driving who's going to be in that village. But I just wanted to remind people also, because there's that stigma or that picture in a lot of people's mind as to what a homeless person looks like, what a homeless person does, what they are like. And you often don't think about that 70-year-old mother who is unhoused, who has the bad back, or you don't think about that 18-year-old who just aged out of the foster care system and now has no place to go. They don't think about that mom with the 2 kids who's living in the car with no place to go, where their safety is improved by being inside behind a locked door. When they're sick, they don't have to be out by 7 o'clock. They are able to stay in. Their mental health is improved. Their physical health is improved. They're able to stabilize and move forward. And I will stop there because I know we're short on time, but you guys know I can continue talking about this for a while.
Hey.
ADA accessible, by the way, in the tiny houses. Many of them are ADA accessible. So I heard ADA mentioned. So we do accommodate people with disabilities.
Okay. First of all, thank you, LIHI. Wonderful speech. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Pastor. Really just kind of sharing this, what to be for us tiny houses. I think we all learned something by being here tonight, but I'm not too sure where this came from. We don't make decisions at workshop, right? So there's no decision to be made tonight, right? Our decision get made either at the committee meeting or the council meeting. Workshop is strictly for council to hear about issues. So we thank you for presenting tonight, and then thank you.
I'm available for questions by
We'll,
so if anyone wants
yep.
to follow up with me.
I will follow you guys. I have other questions, so I will. So we'll adjourn.